I'm Melissa Lane, and welcome to the Lifekraft Podcast. Lifekraft is passionate about helping you live your everyday life better by sharing inspiration, awareness, and tools to enable you to create a fulfilling life. Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Lifekraft Podcast. My name is Melissa Lane and I will be your host today. Today I am going to be sharing one of my favorite books of all time, the book that I usually recommend every single woman read and who I think men should read as well. It's Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, and it's 5 reasons why you should read this book. But before we get going with this amazing book and why I think you should read it, I just want to remind you that we absolutely love hearing from you. So take a screenshot of yourself listening to this episode, write us a positive review on what you loved about this episode, or perhaps you can share in the comments on our social media if you've already read this book and why you think people should read it. If you take action on something small like this, what you're writing down, the quote that inspired you, etc., is more likely to stick with you too. So taking action when you feel inspired is always the way to go. So this book is a massive book. Women Who Run with the Wolves isn't only something that's changed my life, but it's made an impact on, I think, millions of women's lives. Clarissa Pinkola Estes is an amazing writer, and she digs into this book, and I just want to warn you, it's not an easy read. It's not something that you just pick up over a long weekend and finish by that Sunday evening. It's a book filled with stories and psychological stories and scientific stories and stories that really dig deep into the psyche of a woman. And I think it's beautiful the way that she uses stories as this healing balm for our souls. Stories are medicine for the soul, I think. And we've really started to see stories and storytelling change as we evolved as human beings. I know we can think back and see ancestors sitting around campfires and speaking, and women that would be busy in tribal days talking while they're making food and sharing stories, and the men around the campfire sharing stories. And maybe some of us grew up like that, but a lot of times we grow up with other people's stories now. Stories in books and stories on Netflix and stories on the TV, and sometimes they're not the type of stories that really leave lasting change, although there are really some great movies and series and things like that have these deep, impactful stories. But I think as human beings, we've always seen ourselves in stories, and it's a great way that we can look at our situation, we can look at ourselves through different eyes. Sometimes not as harsh as we would when we just look at ourselves in the mirror. But if we see parts of ourselves, our psyche, our habits, our actions in stories, and we see how someone else handled it, we might change easier. We might go on that healing journey quicker. But anyway, I digress. The reason why I think people should read this book is most women have a wild inner woman that they have let die. The introduction to this amazing book is wildlife and the wild woman are both endangered species. So what she does in this book is she uses the analogy of the wild woman, and she compares that to a wolf, and that there is a wild woman inside of each and every one of us, and we let her die. We take her into captivity, we starve her, we don't let her come out to play, and we're actually a lot more like wolves than we think. She studied wolves and she studied women, and the similarities are beautiful. Throughout this book, she has these analogies and these amazing ways to take old tales and old fables and show you why they were so important to share with the next generation. As I said earlier, these stories are medicine for the soul. So sometimes we get stuck in our lives and we get stuck feeling like there is this energy inside of us, that there is this wild side inside of us, that there is this wolf inside of us that needs to come out, but for some reason we don't let it. And sometimes it can show up as a lack of creativity, a lack of spark, a lack of motivation, a lack of passion, a lack of self-love, confusion. All of these types of things are usually just you, woman, not tapped in to that wild woman inside of you, that running with the wolves wild woman inside of you. So I'm going to start with the 5 reasons I think you should read this book. Number 1 is to learn how to embrace your wildish nature. So in this book, there are a lot of tales about the effect that things like over-civilization has on a woman's soul. Over-civilization and really trying to fit into the molds and the boxes that were here before you were even born is a death to the soul of any woman. Because there is a wild woman inside of every one of us wanting to be freed. And women, especially from patriarchal societies, have been oppressed so much. And that wild woman inside of them has been oppressed so much. And it has such a big impact on how we go about life. I see it a lot as a integrative nutrition health coach, how not being in touch with your wild woman has such a massive effect on how you eat, on your relationship with food, on your relationship with your body, on your relationships in total. And I think this is one of the reasons why I think every single woman should read this book. You need to be able to recognize her. You need to be able to recognize that wild woman when she's talking to you, that inner voice, that spark inside of you. She comes out to play sometimes, but we kind of shove her down through society shoulds and shouldn'ts, and do this and be smaller and stay quiet and don't be vulgar and never say anything wrong. And that whole role that a woman needs to take, it's like that Stepford's wife types of roles, and it has such a big impact on our psyche. And I think if you feel like there is a wild nature inside of you that you are not tapped into, you kind of know that there's something inside of you that needs to break out, I want to encourage you to read this book. The next reason why I think every single woman should read this book is so that you can learn to trust your intuition. As you read Women Who Run with the Wolves, you'll see that your intuition, is your compass in life. And that is your wild woman speaking to you, that inner you, that can't be tamed, that is one with nature, that follows her instincts, that trusts herself. When you trust yourself, you go through life in a whole another way. I grew up not trusting myself because I so easily gave my power away to parents and teachers and bosses and relationships and people who I just always kind of looked up to. And it was trained into me as well. It was trained into me to not trust myself, to always think that mother knows best and my teacher knows best and my boss knows more than me. And this person in a relationship, they say they love me and they know me better than I know myself. Those are such limiting beliefs that we need to let go of. And the most beautiful thing is when you start reading this book, you'll start seeing that your intuition is that little spark inside of you, of that wild woman, that wild nature trying to communicate with you. And it'll guide you down a path that other people in your life might not think makes sense. But that might be the path that leads you to bliss, that leads you to peace, that leads you to happiness. So I encourage you to read this book if you feel like you need to start trusting your intuition again. She shares it in the most beautiful stories, and you will never be the same. And you will start embracing that inner nature, that wild nature, and trusting her when she speaks. Thirdly, I really think every single woman should read Women Who Run with the Wolves so that you can find your tribe. In this book, she shares the story of the Ugly Duckling and why it's such an important story to tell kids. And in my own life, when I read it in this book, I sat weeping because I was a little ugly duckling. And if you don't know the story about the Ugly Duckling, I encourage you to read Women Who Run with the Wolves or just Google it. But I didn't feel like I belonged where I was born. I was always made fun of being the strange one in the family. And I was kind of wild. And I was always the peculiar one. And people used to call me weird. And it made me feel like I wasn't where I belonged. And so I went on a journey searching. Not knowing that I was actually searching for my soul tribe. I was actually searching for that place where I would get to see people who look like me, who think like me, who love me for me. And I really think that we don't always belong where we are born. And it's a big statement, but I know that there's someone listening to this that is thinking, yeah, Melissa, I didn't belong where I was born. I'm either still finding it, I'm on that journey, and I want you to carry on. Find your soul tribe. Find those people who love you and make loving you look easy. It's not right to feel like loving you is hard. Find your tribe so that those quirks, those things that make you are celebrated and seen as your strengths, not as your weaknesses. And Clarissa says in the book, anyone who does not support your art, which is your life, is not worth your time. And I want you to remember that. So if you feel like you need to learn how to find your tribe, read Women Who Run with the Wolves. It's going to give you amazing insights. And it helped me go on a journey where I have surrounded myself with women who inspire me daily. And I try to build that type of community, not only in the Lifekraft Podcast community, but also in the Melissa Lane Wellness community, where we can heal and when we can go on that journey together. So it's so, so vital to find your tribe, find your community. Next up, if you want to learn about love in a whole different way, my goodness, does she unpack love and relationships in this book. She usually says that love will not only bring life, but it will bring death and face everything about that person down to the bone. So in this book, there is a tale about the skeleton woman. And when I read that, my heart shot open because I realized that we don't get taught this fundamental thing about love and being in an intimate relationship. And that is that you're going to go through the life-death life cycle quite a lot of times. And that in every relationship, you need to be able to get to a point where you see that person for who he or who she is in all of their glory, down to the bones, like a skeleton woman. And that when you embrace someone in that way, it leads to true love and true intimacy. And most of the time, we're afraid to do that. And a lot of times, it's just how they've been trained to. Men usually only seek the beautiful, the easy. And she has this amazing way of teaching you that a man who only wants you for the beauty and for the ease kind of wants a relationship with his mother, not with a wild woman. And that if a man cannot embrace that wild nature, that wild side of you, that might not be the one that you want to go through life with. And he has to go on his own journey because that wild nature inside of you is going to come out. And if he doesn't embrace her, he's going to kill her. And if he doesn't honor her, you won't feel like she can come out to play. And that is the part of you that is playful, that is adventurous, that is creative, that is loving and nurturing and protective all at the same time. Think about that side of you. That side of you wants to come out in relationships. And if you're not in a relationship with a man who is okay to see her, Clarissa Pinkola says that he will declaw her. So instead of having a vital woman, he will have a nice woman who is declawed. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be nice. I want to be powerful. I want to embrace my wild nature. And I want to be able to run like the wolves. And that's what this book will inspire you to go on that journey where you can find that. And lastly, the last reason I really recommend that you read this book is to understand the life, death, life cycle. Death is a part of life. And we've kind of been cut off from it. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to see it. We don't kill the animals that we eat. We don't spend time with a lot of loved ones who are passing and going into transition. Death has become this taboo in many of our cultures to talk about. We don't clean the bodies of our loved ones who have passed. We don't let children be there when another life is born into this world. We are so cut off from the life-death life cycle. And I call it that because she explains in this book that death is always followed by more life. So whether it is a death in a relationship, whether it's a physical death, whether it's a death of an idea, whether it's a death of an old version of you that lived but isn't necessary anymore, it doesn't serve you anymore, it is always followed by more life. So I want you to think about that. Women's bodies show this the whole time. Women's bodies have cycles. We call it our menstrual cycle or our moon cycle. It shows us on a continuous basis that we go through life, death, life. But we don't embrace that when it happens in our lives. And it's a strange phenomena. We've been cut off from that. And it's true for our psyches, it's true for our relationships, it's true for our careers, it's true in every single area of our life. We call it seasons sometimes. But I love that there is a beauty in every single stage of life. And she shares it so powerfully in this book. That there is a life, death, life cycle. And no matter where you might be right now listening to this podcast episode, if there's an area in your life where it feels like it's dying, old beliefs that need to die, relationships that need to die, career choices that you might have made, family dynamics that aren't working anymore, that you know you need to let die, you don't need to be afraid of that happening because life always follows death. Remember that. So, like wolves and other creatures, the soul and the spirit is able to thrive on very little, she says, and sometimes for long times and on nothing. And I don't want that to be your soul and your spirit. I want your soul and your spirit to be able to thrive on every single thing that nourishes you. And this book will help you see that in a very powerful way. It'll teach you how to nourish your soul in different ways, through creativity, through food, through dance, through crying, through being powerful, through running, through whatever your soul needs. Because if you're a woman listening to this, you are so complex and it's beautiful. And don't let life make you feel like your complexity is something to hide. It's needed. It's needed now. And that's why I want you to read Women Who Run with the Wolves. Clarissa Pinkola Estes changed my life. And I want her to change yours. So today, pick up this book. We are going to put some links in the descriptions down below. Pick it up, get the Kindle, read it. Let me know how you find it, what amazing insights you found. I promise you, every single time you read this book, you'll gain new insights. You'll see different versions of you in a different stage in your life. This book is just fantastic, and I hope that it serves you well. And I hope that you share your journey with me. I'd love to know, and that you let that wild nature inside of you just bubble to the surface, and that you embrace her for who she is. You deserve to live a very full life. You deserve to live a big life, a powerful life. And if you're a man listening to this and you actually listen to the end, I want to encourage you to read this book too, or to perhaps gift a woman in your life with this book. That you are man enough to be able to handle a woman's wild nature, because you were made for that. You were made to be able to embrace and just amplify that strong, wild nature of a woman. It's inside of you. You don't have to have her be small for you to be big. You can both thrive and have an amazing relationship. I love you. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Thank you for listening to 5 reasons why you should read Women Who Run with the Wolves. I hope you have a beautiful day. Until we speak again next time, so much love. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode and taking the time to invest in yourself and in your future. If you loved this episode, be sure to share it with us by leaving a positive review or tagging us in a post or in your stories. Share one thing that stood out or inspired you to live your everyday life better. This helps us create more meaningful episodes for you to enjoy. If you're not already following us on social media, be sure to follow @LifeKraft for more inspiration and tools to help you live your most powerful life. And remember, you always have the power to craft a better life for yourself, and we are here to help you do just that. We'll connect again in the next episode, and until then, keep creating a life that you're excited to wake up to. We enjoy bringing you interviews from experts and everyday people so that they can talk about their experiences and share information, tips, and what has worked for them on their journey towards a better life. However, remember that the opinions or advice of our guests and myself, the host, should not be taken as personal, actionable advice and is given as general information and education only. Please always remember to consult a qualified professional before implementing any medical, financial, legal, or other advice that you believe might work for you. Lifekraft is not responsible nor liable for your decision when implementing anything you hear on the podcast. Please listen and act responsibly. The opinions of our guests do not represent the opinions or views of Lifekraft or Melissa Lane personally and are meant as information and general education only. Education only. Education